If you're listening to this right now, I'm willing to bet you've felt that specific exhausting pressure.
Yeah.
The one that comes from trying to manage everyone and everything around you.
Mm-hmm. We've all been there.
You're desperately trying to get a friend to see reason, or you're mediating some family drama that honestly has nothing to do with you.
Or just spending hours, replaying some comment a colleague made that just gets under your skin.
It's the ultimate energy drain.
It really is. And I think that frustration comes from giving so much of our personal power or mental real estate to things that are just completely outside of our control.
Right. We spend days, maybe weeks, arguing with people in our own heads.
Yes. Wrestling with these situations we have zero actual power over, trying to change people who, frankly, don't want to change.
And when we do that, we're not just getting tired. We're actively sabotaging ourselves, aren't we?
That's what the source material we're looking at today argues. This constant battle is maybe the single biggest barrier that keeps us from the happiness and success we actually deserve.
It's an expensive habit, energetically speaking.
It is, but what's so fascinating here is how simple the proposed solution is.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Today, we are doing a deep dive into Mel Robbins' The Let Them theory. It's this. Well, it's a groundbreaking psychological tool, a mindset shift.
And the promise is huge. It says the key to happiness, success, and even love can be boiled down to just 2 words.
2 words that, they became a global phenomenon almost overnight.
The response was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mel Robbins releases this concept and it just explodes.
It did. We're talking about a book that sold, over 7 million copies in 9 months? It became one of the top-selling nonfiction books of 2025.
And I think that's because it wasn't just another self-help book. It felt more like a cultural shift.
Because the problem is universal. That frustration of having your own peace determined by someone else's choices. Everyone feels that.
Okay, so let's unpack this core idea of let them.
Mm-hmm.
At first glance, it can sound a little like passive resignation, like you're just giving up.
Right, and that's the most common misunderstanding.
But it's not that at all, is it?
It is the exact opposite of resignation. The core idea is that saying those 2 words, let them, is a really profound act of self-liberation.
Self-liberation. I like that.
It's a psychological tool designed to immediately set you free from what you cannot and really what you should not be trying to control.
So it's less about accepting their bad behavior and more about protecting my internal energy, drawing a boundary around my own peace of mind.
Precisely. The source material breaks it down into 4 main things let them sets us free from.
Okay.
The opinions of others, the drama they create, their judgments, and most importantly, that exhausting cycle of trying to manage everything and everyone.
So by just acknowledging their right to choose, even if I hate their choice, I instantly pull my energy back from that conflict.
You do. You take your power back.
It sounds a lot like the concept of locus of control from psychology.
It's directly related. Absolutely. We're talking about whether you have an internal or an external locus of control.
Meaning where you believe the power to change things lies.
Exactly. If you're constantly stressed by other people, you're operating from an external locus. You think your happiness depends on them changing.
But this theory flips that.
It moves it firmly back inside of you. When you say let them, you are basically stating, I accept I cannot control them, and therefore I am reclaiming my power to control my response.
Let's make this really tangible. So say a close relative makes a terrible financial decision.
It's a classic.
They drain their savings, and it gives you massive anxiety because you're worried you'll have to bail them out later.
The normal response is to argue, to plead, to get resentful, all to try and change their choice.
Right.
But that's where the power shift happens. Instead of burning all that energy on their choice, you just internally you say, let them.
Let them make that choice.
Let them make that choice. Let them have that opinion. The relief you feel from just stopping the fight inside your own head, it's immediate. It's immense.
Because you've moved the locus of control away from them and back to you.
Back to the only person you can actually control.
That simple release sounds transformative. But you said let them is only the first half of it.
Yes. This is where it gets really interesting.
Because the goal isn't just letting go. It's what you do with all that new liberated energy.
Exactly. The let them theory has this huge proactive twist. If you stop wasting energy on controlling others, you have to redirect it somewhere.
And that's where you ask the next question.
The most important question, what will I do? We go from let them to the really powerful affirmative, let me.
I love that. It's not just a philosophy, it's a demand for action.
That is.
You're reallocating your most valuable resources, your time, your focus, your emotional energy back onto your own life.
That is the practical application. The theory puts the power to create a life you love right back in your hands. You stop wasting energy on, whether your boss likes you or if your family approves of your choices.
And you start focusing on what truly matters.
Your happiness, your goals, your boundaries, your life.
And for anyone listening who needs to understand the how, the source material makes it really clear this isn't just, fluffy self-help. It's backed by science.
That's a vital point. This is deeply rooted in things like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT.
How so?
Well, specifically in principles of cognitive restructuring. Our stress, that urge to control, it's often fueled by a thought pattern like they shouldn't do that or this has to change.
Ah, okay. You're fighting reality.
You're fighting a thought. When you say let them, you're restructuring. You accept the reality of the situation, and that immediately short-circuits the emotional loop.
You're essentially just stopping the mental fight.
Yes, and physically that shift is profound. When we feel out of control, our amygdala, the brain's little alarm center, is firing like crazy.
Keeping us anxious, resentful.
In a state of high alert. By saying let them, you actually calm that amygdala response and shift energy to the prefrontal cortex.
Which is the part of the brain for planning and proactive decisions.
Right. So the energy you free up from fighting is instantly available for let me actions. It makes the whole process very clear and grounded in how our brains actually work.
Okay, let's get into how this actually plays out in the real world. The book mentions 8 key areas, but let's dive deep on the ones that cause the most stress for people.
Starting with the big one, relationships and conflict.
Of course.
This is the primary testing round. Conflict usually starts because someone isn't meeting our expectations. A friend is always unreliable. A partner keeps forgetting things.
And the traditional response is to try and force them to be different.
Which, as we all know, works so well.
Right, it doesn't.
So applying the theory means you first have to let them be who they are. You accept their nature. For instance, you have a sibling who is always late, chronically.
The old me would call them, lecture them, get frustrated, and ruin my own mood before they even arrive.
But the let them approach is just, let them be late. And then the let me move becomes about setting the boundary.
Ah, this is the key.
Absolutely. The let me response takes that energy and turns it into a proactive plan. Let me stop relying on them for things that are time sensitive.
Or let me only make flexible plans with them from now on.
Exactly. You are deciding how you will respond, how you will adjust. You're focused entirely on protecting your peace, not on changing their personality.
That's so powerful. Let's apply that to work and career stress, another huge source of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So much of work is defined by things we can't change. A negative colleague, a difficult boss, a frustrating new company policy.
The control trap at work is insidious. We waste so much energy trying to manage up or just complaining about things we can't influence.
So if my boss is just always in a bad mood,
you let them have their bad mood.
And my let me is then about,
let me focus on my performance. Let me develop a new skill. Let me network with other leaders. It's about building your own career path, your own reputation, so your peace is never dependent on your boss's mood.
You build your own mobility.
Yes, you build your own power.
Which leads right into the comparison trap. With social media, competitive jobs, the anxiety from comparing ourselves to others is just relentless.
Comparison is maybe the easiest place to see this work. You see someone's success and you just say, let them.
Let them have their success.
Let them have their life. Respect their path. The energy drain only happens when we see their success as our failure.
So the let me flow becomes the antidote to that self-doubt.
It has to be. The moment you let them succeed without taking it personally, you reclaim the mental space to define what victory means for you.
You stop using their timeline as a weapon against yourself.
You pursue what's genuinely important to you, not what you think you should be doing based on others.
And really quickly, what about just daily emotional resilience?
Mm-hmm.
The source material connects this to radical acceptance.
That's a great connection. Radical acceptance is just accepting life on life's terms, not fighting reality.
The traffic jam, the spilled coffee.
The computer crash right before a deadline, you stop fighting it. You just say, let it happen. This practice builds resilience because you stop wasting energy on tiny things you can't change.
Okay, we have to address the nuance here because this is a really simple, powerful idea.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone applies this to their spouse or their child, isn't there a risk that let them just feels like checking out? like passive-aggressive resignation?
That is a critical question, and the theory is very clear on this. It does not advocate for emotional detachment or for tolerating toxic behavior.
So it's not a shield for bad actions?
Not at all. With a spouse who has a destructive habit, for example, you let them own their choice. But your let me is to state the consequences for you and for the family.
Your let me is to set a firm boundary.
A very firm boundary. And that boundary might be, let me remove myself and our children from this situation if it continues.
So it's not about accepting abuse or harm. It's about using the framework to reinforce your own responsibility to act.
Precisely. In cases of systemic inequality or abuse, let them doesn't mean passively accepting it. It means let them have their flawed opinion, but let me dedicate my energy to structural change and protecting myself.
It's about recovering your power to act.
Yes, the theory is ultimately about empowerment and responsibility, never indifference.
So what does this all boil down to for you, our listener? I think the ultimate benefit here is that this is simple. It's easy to use every single day.
It gives you a new, intuitive language for setting boundaries and for finally letting go of that resentment you've been carrying.
Just imagine for a second how much emotional baggage, all the anxiety, the anger, the things you replay in your head will just drop away.
When you stop giving your precious power away to people and situations you can never, ever control.
The theory promises to give you the tools to fully unleash your own potential. And that starts with a choice you can make right now.
Think about it. What small thing are you trying to force or manage or control today? A colleague's attitude, a relative's drama.
Just try practicing those two words in your head. Just say, let them.
Because that is where the power to create a truly meaningful, self-directed life begins. The moment you stop fighting what is and start focusing on what you can build.